I'm a physics major. I try to believe things based on actual proof. I haven't found any personal religious experience myself. So I think that's why I stay without religion. So if there's a actual Christian God, then I'm not really sure why he kind of favored people from Middle East or Western people other than the Northern Asian people. I don't think truth should be that really raggy. Like you have to fix every time you find some kind of errors. I think life is a burden. If anyone has something even slightly similar to love, I don't think he would let his creations go through that kind of procedure.
Hey folks, good to see you again. I'm back in Korea for a short period of time. Decided to pay a visit to Seoul National University. Had a great conversation with a student who's a physics major and who really showed a lot of good critical thinking about the matters of faith and religion. And even though he does not believe himself, but it's the process of thinking just give me confidence that I hope that one day he will look deeper into such things and we'll be able to find a thread of truth, a thread of love in the story in the Bible. And I pray that God would help him just open his eyes and his seeking and his searching for truth. That's my prayer for him, and I just thank God that for the opportunity to speak to him and for the time in Korea. So pray for me as I return back to London and continue this ministry. Thank you again. God bless. Do you have any belief, any religion?
Not particularly.
Not particularly. Okay. Has that ever changed for you? When you were younger, did you go to like a temple or a church?
I have followed to temples when my mother went, but not really. She's not a really devoted believer, so yeah.
Was that like a Buddhism?
Yeah, Buddhist.
Buddhism. Okay. But you yourself don't have any strong beliefs?
Yes, I do not.
Okay. And if you think about the existence, because I know Buddhism is slightly different. Buddhism doesn't specifically believe in any God. But do you believe there could be a God? Like when I say God, like God who created the universe, God who created human beings and life and the planets and the universe?
Oh, that's a very question which is hard to answer, I think. I'm a physics major. I study physics, and there are many physicists who believe in God. I mean, there can be many kind of gods. Some say that laws of nature itself is a form of God, but I think when we are talking about this stuff, the most usual thing we talk about is God with characters. Like God we talk about in specific God, like God in Christianity or God in what Muslims say. And in that case, I think my opinion is that it doesn't really matter, because I don't think there's any difference in the reality whether they exist or not.
Oh really? That's interesting. So you think the world would not, like if someone could prove today some scientific proof that there was God, let's say the Big Bang or fine-tuning of the universe, you know, the constants, the nuclear force, the weak, the strong, and electromagnetic force, all of those were put in place by some higher power.
Yes.
And that was proven. Let's say hypothetically it was proven. Do you think that the world would not be a different place after that news came out?
So I'm currently having hard time to think of is how there could be any scientific proof of such God existing. Like, I don't think there's any really some like universal, not universal, some general way to prove there's a certain specific characteristic God. Like, let's say, as you said, there are like some specific being who put their constants there. How can we know that specific being is the one we mentioned in Christianity, or how can you specify that? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's really possible.
So that would be the second question, right? The first question would be, is there a God? The first question is there a God? And if someone could say, well, if you look at all the arguments for it, such as the beginning of the universe, the fact that the universe is expanding, it had to have a beginning, the fact of the fine-tuning of these constants, right? You can look at the laws and the ordered nature of this universe, the beginning of life. That would give not proof necessarily. It's difficult. Proof is a very strong word, right? But you could say there's strong arguments for a mind behind the universe, right? Now the second question is, if you agree with that, the next question is, okay, what kind of mind, what kind of a God is he, right? That would be then the question of, okay, we have an Islam God, we have a Jewish God, we have a Christian God, we have Hindu gods. That's the second question, right? But for the first question is the first, right? People sometimes don't even agree that there could be a God, a mind behind the universe.
Yes, I do agree that there might be a possibility of God's existence, but
Yeah.
my opinion is that existence of God, when we are dealing with reality. So, yeah, if there is a existence of God, if there's a really scientific fact about God exists, which have not existed yet, but it kind of turns out to be true, then it would have a huge impact on people's life. But in terms of like facts, like why, I don't think that it'll change any scientific fact. So,
I don't think it would change any scientific facts either, right? Because scientific facts exist by definition. They exist. They're there to be discovered, right? They're there to be discovered. It wouldn't change those facts, right?
I think, I think that's the really important point there, because like some people even say God's existence can like disorient some facts that we believe in. Like, I have seen some people say that, like, I'm not really familiar with Christian saying, but I heard one. There are opinions about saying that Bible mentions that our Earth is like no more older than like 6,000 years, and the way of people coping with that, with the like geologic history, is that the world was made at the 6,000 year with all those geographic records already in, and I think that's really not scientific. I think that's trying to I don't believe that. Yeah.
Sure, and I think to be honest, I think that question can be answered probably without having to whether there's a God or not God. I think that question about the age of Earth can probably be debated and discussed without the other question. I think right. I think maybe there's some different opinions there, but let's maybe kind of continue the other thought that you had, which was, if there was shown to be a God, how would you go to what would be the next question? Would be then, what kind of God we would find.
Yeah.
And I guess I was going to ask you, like, how familiar are you with different religion claims?
Well, I'm a fan of a lot of myths, so I know a lot of how myths that are how people believe that our Earth was created, or how they create our universe. And yeah, I think that's all of it. Like, I'm a little familiar with some biblical fables, but yeah, I think that's about it.
You're familiar with a little bit of Bible, right? A little bit,
Yeah.
maybe some of the other stories. Okay. How much more of the Bible are you familiar with? Like, the reason why I'm going there is that there are different, obviously, depending on which God we understand to exist, if there is such a God, right? It's a different way to relate to this God, right? So Christian God is a very personal God, right? Even so personal that he sends his son, Jesus Christ, right, 2,000 years ago, to come and do something, right? In Islam, it's a very impersonal God. You cannot know him, you cannot fully understand him, and he's very unknowable, very just mysterious, right? And then there's Hindu, they have multiple gods, and they have a god of this and that and the other, Ganesh and Krishna and Rama, and there's a very complicated ecosystem of gods, right? Now, I guess I'm coming more from a Christian background. I guess my question for you is, Christians deal with a very personal God, a God who constantly interacts with his creation. Because he cares about his creation, and even to the point that he loves his creation.
Okay.
What do you think of, is that possible? I was just speaking earlier to someone, one of the other students, and when I said to them, what do you think about a God who actually loves his creation? He kind of started laughing. He said, that's not possible. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it depends on how you define love. And personally, I think life of humanity. I think this is a little Buddhism inside me speaking, and I think to people generally, I think life is a burden. So you are born without consent, and you cannot choose the environment you are born, and eventually you wither and die. So if anyone has something even slightly similar to love, I don't think he would let his creations go through that kind of procedure. Like, that's just my opinion, and I cannot say anything about higher beings, though. But yeah, that's I think as far as I can go.
Okay. Let me show you my understanding of what that love means, right? So love, which is he created us, right? So I see life as a gift, right? I know you just said life is a burden. It can feel like a burden, but one thing interesting that I found that every time I've spoken to and I asked them, look, are you happy to be alive? And ultimately, even the person with the worst experiences in life, they say, yes, I'd rather be alive than I'm happy that I was born. I never wished that I was not born. Very few people actually wish that they would never be born. So anyway, that's to the side. But the other thing that I would say, that God's love is ultimately eternal in nature. To us, this life could be, 80 years if we're lucky, right? 80 years. But then there's eternity to be considered after that, right? Which is in a different existence, different reality, right? This is existence, very physical reality, very sometimes nice, like today it's nice breeze, sometimes too hot, like it was earlier, sometimes too cold, sometimes it's pain, suffering. But like in the eternal existence, right? If you believe in things like heaven or hell, these existences are different in nature. Like in a heaven, we are with our Creator for eternity, learning things about Him that are difficult to ever fully learn. And if you're a physicist, as you said you were, you could be for eternity discovering the the beauty of the nature and of the laws that he put across the universe, the different phenomena, the quasars, the galaxies. You could explore that forever for the rest of your existence, and you would have joy and gladness for being part of something as beautiful as that, right? That could be one example of it, right? And so that's part of his love that basically is a relationship. So in a relationship you want to be with the other person, right? So I don't know if you have a girlfriend, but you certainly have parents, and you have maybe a brother or sister, and you express your love by presence. When you're far away from them, they miss you, or you miss them, and when you're together, you feel good, because that's the nature of relationship, right? And so I think that's very true about God as well. When we are far from God because we walk away from him, that is not a good place to be in, and that's why he draws us to himself. He wants us to be with him in a relationship, because that's what we are meant to be. That's the fullness of our potential, is meant to be expressed in a relationship with our creator, with our maker. That is somehow looks like sometimes a relationship with a husband and wife, or parents and child, but much more than that. Does that help at all, or?
So now you're getting into a part where like you have to specify which God you're talking about, and you have to specify your opinion about him. So I
Sure.
mean, like, I know that there are a lot of diverse, like, I mean, there are many opinions also inside Christianity, right? There are like many versions, right? And so to me, like, the love you mentioned, so I really do not believe in afterlife. I think that's quite common for Korean people, I guess. Like, they're very realistic and stick to the ground people. And yeah, for that reason, so you mentioned about eternal search in heaven. And so, as I haven't lived that long, but as I have lived, I have never seen that's eternal, and I don't think I'll ever see it until I die, because like I don't think nobody who stepped in this planet have ever experienced or proven something that is eternal, the eternity's existence. And like most common theories most common and most widely accepted theories we have about our universe claims that our universe itself isn't eternal, and I don't think we can have simultaneously we can accept eternal heaven or hell and the notion of finite universe. So yeah, to me, like, I feel like we are starting from wrong premises, and I don't know how to make logic out of wrong premises. So
Well, so to correct one of the premises, right, that I think you were assuming. So I'm not talking about that this would be the place of eternal existence. I agree with you, actually. I agree that nothing in this creation has been shown to be eternal. In fact, quite the opposite, right? Entropy tells us that things will degrade, like the energy will decrease and the chaos will increase, right? And the physical, even the heat of the universe, like if nothing changes, the universe continues to expand and dies a heat death, right? But basically all the stars explode and all the heat is evenly distributed and there's nothing there anymore, right? That's the ultimate death of the universe, if nothing changes, right? But that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about, so the hypothesis here is that God will create a new heaven and a new earth, meaning that this universe that we're living in right now, one day will be done away with and will be replaced by something different, right? Because if God could create this universe, then surely he can create another one, because the one that he created, this one, he created with the property and characteristics of entropy, right? The one that doesn't have that proper death characteristics will be a different one, and things would feel differently. And whether we call it eternity or not is, I agree with you, it's a very difficult concept to get our heads around, because nothing is really physical. Nothing physical can be eternal, and difficult to do that. But for all practical purposes, right? Let's call it that. For all practical purposes, it would be longer than we can ever imagine. Let's put it that way, without using the word eternal, right? That's what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Right.
Yes, I think the interesting hypothesis, and so how do I feel about it? Like, yeah, that'll be grateful if I do good and go to heaven. And
Yeah.
there are some being that controls the righteous and wrong, because nowadays so many wrong things in this world, I think. And
Yeah.
what if their wrongs are recorded, and after life there will be judgment? Yeah, I think that's a very convenient thought, convenient thinking. And I think if it helps, unless it harms others, I don't think there's like no reason not to believe it. But frankly, I try to believe things based on actual proof, and I haven't found any like personal religious experience myself. So I think that's why I stay without religion.
So it's a very reasonable conclusion, right? If you haven't had any experiences or any other reasons to believe, there's nothing for you to change your ways, right? The only thing that I would suggest you do, right? I don't know, have you read much about the claims that Christianity is making versus other religions? Like, do you know much about like the Bible and what it says and how it was written, how it came together, and some of the evidence that we have for Bible's authenticity?
Yeah, I have. Actually, I'm very interested in religious like concepts, or because like so many people are really serious about it. So when I want to talk about it, I think I should well acquainted to it. So that's why. And also there are so many religious biblical references in nowadays literatures or movies. So I think it's worth to study.
Yeah.
So I have tried, and the problem with religious studies is that it is very local. There isn't really like global standard for every. I mean, there are so many interpretations about the Bible. I mean, Bible itself is there, but there are so many versions of Bible, like who translated it and who wrote it. Not who wrote it, who translated it, and and translation includes interpretation by the translator, and yeah. So.
But you see, I would say all those problems are true of any other work, right? I'm sure now, today, right, or in the next couple of weeks as your semester starts, you'll read textbooks. Some of those textbooks were written by people who are not your native speaker language, Korean, right? They were English guys who wrote physics. I don't know if you have, when I studied physics, by the way, in my university as well in the United States, and so English is not my first language. I'm Croatian.
Okay.
But I'm sure you'll have some textbooks written by English or American guys, right? It would have been translated to you, right? It would have been translated.
Yes.
You have to go through. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, in that case, but it's kind of different because for textbook, there's a very low chance of translator to have an opinion about the ingredients in the textbook, because I would highly doubt that like translating the ingredients textbook into some other ways would have benefits to the translator. But I think in the Bible it's a very crucial manner, because I think when I have talked with religious people, almost all of, I think religion is a very personal experience, and
Yeah.
it includes, it highly includes one's opinions. And in that case, I would not really have a high credential on the author's
Yeah.
neutralness. I think.
Yeah, neutrality. Yeah.
Neutrality.
I guess where I was going with that is basically what the concern you're expressing is a right concern, but I would say it doesn't take more than a quick search on Google to solve that concern, right? All you have to do is you have to say you have to type in something like, what is the most accurate translation or most objective translation of the Bible version? Which version would be the most objectively translated? Because you have different kinds of translations of the Bible. You have what is known word for word translation, and the other way is thought for thought, right? What you're concerned about is this thought for thought, which is an author is taking thoughts written originally in Greek and Hebrew, and he's translating ideas into ideas that he's expressing or she is expressing in another language. A word for word is a very literal translation, right? And it gives you the most authentic translation that usually scholars use because they want to know what the original context was, but it's not very easily readable necessarily, because it's like you taking English and translating it literally to Korean. It would look funny. It would sound funny, right? You would translate sentences. To me, for example, if there was like a Korean sign, you wouldn't translate it to me word for word. You would translate it to me with an idea. Like if there's a stop sign, you just say, look, it just says stop, even though there's like 7 words there. You should just like, do not go there, right? You would not tell me, oh, something. You just say, just don't go there. That's the idea, right? Anyway, I'm going too long about this. All I'm saying, my point is that it doesn't take too long to solve these issues. But the other thing that I think I agree with you, which I think you said well, is that Bible is the bestseller of all time, right? There's a reason for that. There's no other book that's been sold or printed or distributed or published more than the Bible in the history of publishing, and it's changed a lot more than we realize. The idea of universities, where we are right now, is a very Christian concept. The idea of hospitals, universities, these are ideas that came out of Christians who were seeking to preserve knowledge and to share education. Those ideas are not necessarily found in other cultures that were not driven by Christian principles. Same thing with hospitals, same thing with charity, same thing with human rights, same thing with a bunch of other things. Laws, the idea of a law and a law system is the idea that has biblical roots and biblical principles. So I'm not saying everything that Bible or everything that can be found in the Bible is all beneficial. A lot of people have distorted it. They have taken it and twisted it for their own gains. Absolutely, they have. But like I said, I mean that's you can do that with every single thing, every single book. You can take that and you can twist it, distort it. You can do whatever. But the reason that the Bible has been so much used and abused is because it's the bestseller of all time. It means a lot of things to a lot of people.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I do agree that.
Yeah.
Well, books that are read by many people must mean something. But I have to point out that, if I remember correctly, the second or the third most bestseller in the world was a autobiography by Mao.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think that kind of speaks itself that being read by many people doesn't really like directly mean that it's right. And I think so. So I'm not saying that Bible is completely wrong or something, but I'm saying that there should be more concerns about some other stuff as well. And also, the problem with my problem with Bible is that not actually a problem. But the one thing that's kind of worries me is that Bible itself is a very Western-centered book, right?
Not at all. Actually, it's been written in a Middle Eastern context,
it starts
right?
from Middle Eastern. I mean, that's also West from our point of view. So,
It's not West from my point of view, and I live in the West.
okay, and
Yeah.
so, I mean, like mid northern Northeast Asian contact with Christianity in the Northeastern Asia. I think it was like around
True. Yeah.
much later than the
Early 19th century, late 18th century, something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
little earlier than that, but yeah. I mean, but so if so if Bible so if there's a actual Christian God, then I'm not really sure why he kind of favored people from Middle East or Western people other than the Northern Asian people. And yeah, that's why I think it's a more of a cultural thing than something that could be argued with like truth or truth.
Yeah. I would agree with you only to an extent, right? Because I think we do see that with other religions. Many other religions are very culturally aligned. Buddhism is found mainly in Eastern Asia, right?
Yes.
China, India, Japan, Korea. Islam is found in Middle East, right? Saudi Arabia, some Indonesian spread, but mostly in the countries of the Middle East. But I think Christianity, I would say, out of all the religion, arguably is the most culturally cross-cultural religion, and that is, I would say, because the very essence of Christianity is cross-cultural. Because the very purpose, like if you read the Bible and you read what Jesus is saying and how he's approaching different cultures that he comes into contact with, he actually encourages his disciples to go out into all the nations and actually to interact with them and to share with them the good news, right?
Yes.
Which is not necessarily something you find in other writings. In other writings, there's no recognition necessarily there is the world out there, and all of them are human beings, all of them are equally valued. This idea is very, I'm not sure if it's unique, but it's very certainly proprietary to Christianity, to the extent that it's one of the reasons, for example, why Christians were anti-slavery, because we see and pro-human rights is because Christians have historically seen the value of a human being, no matter who the human being is, where they come from, what race they are, what color, or what gender they are. We all saw human beings as the images of God. That's a very doctrinal. That's at the essence of our doctrine, and yeah, it might seem Western, as you say, from your perspective, but that idea was very strange initially to the West as well, until it was adopted and made part of religious establishment. But it took a long time to get there. It wasn't always. I mean, that only came, from 4th, 5th century. It took 400 years for that idea to be established in the West. It was resisted. It was pagan. The Romans were not Christians. Romans had Zeus and mythology, right? Greeks had Athena and many other gods. It was a Marvel universe. That's what they believed in, right? They had gods and goddesses. The idea of a single God, and also the idea of a God who died on the cross, they laughed at. They thought it was a joke. They couldn't understand that.
Yeah, so I have recently read a Nigerian novel called All Things Part Apart.
Okay, I haven't heard about that, no.
So it's a novel that happens in the pre-modern era of Nigeria. So there are many people who are believing in kind of like a voodoo cult, what they originally had. I'm not sure I'm saying this correctly, but so they came in contact with outland in Western invaders, and the way they describe this contact with outland people is that they don't come with violence. They come in peace. They are mostly missionaries, and
right.
I think that's the part kind of you mentioned, that like how Jesus commanded their disciples to spread apart and like and spread their word. And so the interesting thing is that eventually there is a violence between those two, like traditionals and the original people and the invaders. But there are people who get, how do you say, that turned into Christianity, converted to Christian people. And yeah, the reason they are converted because they are very oppressed people in the society, traditional society. There are women and there are like people who are believed to have been cursed. So that's kind of, yeah, I think that's why Christianity spread like that, because they kind of gathered the people who are oppressed. That's why it became so popular. And I think that, yes, I think that has some like moral meaning also. But to me, I think it's a well-made product, cultural product that is with enormous so it kind of stand on the, so it won the almost all the competition with other religions because it kind of valued human rights and people kind of liked it. And I think you cannot say that just because it won the competition that it's actually true, because yeah, how can we don't call that a proof. So
I agree with you, and that wouldn't be an argument for proof, right, or for truth of anything just because something is popular. You could take, Hitler in Nazi Germany he was quite popular.
yeah.
We don't agree with him. Largely, the world doesn't agree with that idea anymore. But you're right. I mean, so the question would be, what makes something true, right? What would, let me make it personal to you, right? So, what would convince you that Christianity specifically is true?
So when I kind of have this kind of conversation with my religious friend also quite often, and the thing I realize is that whether it's truth or not is not the main point of this discussion. In fact, I think the most valuable thing is that whether it have virtue or whether it's valuable or not to have religion or to pursue it. And so yeah, if it comes to fact, so what I think you need is a scientific proof that is unarguable, like unarguably true. And if you get to that, I don't think there could be an end to a discussion. But then it goes to the realm of value and virtue. And I think Christianity has its virtues, and yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, I think you put that quite well, because it's a combination for me. It's a combination of both of those things, right? I think there's truth that has to be there, which we have to be able to test. And I would say proof is too strong, because I don't think, apart from mathematics and logic, it's difficult to construct a proof in real world settings. But I would say having solid arguments on multiple disciplines, historical, archaeological, physics, philosophy, multiple arguments have to be able to show the veracity or the truthfulness of the claims that you're making. That to me is one point. And the other point is that the fruit of what proceeds out of such a belief has to be shown to have merit, to have value, to have outcomes that are ultimately benefiting human beings, right? And so we should examine the history of this movement, of this belief, and and ask ourselves, has this movement benefited human beings? Has it shown itself to be of value, of good, right? Because if it hasn't, then it could be true, but look, why believe it? Because it has no value, it doesn't show itself to have any sort of practical use of it, right?
Yeah.
And to me, I think, I'd say both of those things I think Christianity has probably the strongest, I would say, case to be made, out of religions. And I've studied a number of religions, not to the level of expertise necessarily. So take my claim with a pinch of salt. But I would say, for me, I'm very much convinced that Christianity has the most foundations on both of those points.
Yeah, I think I should disagree on that, because I think Christianity has, like you said, it's like Bible is the most widely read bestseller of the world, and yeah, I do agree on that. And also based on that fact, since Christianity was like the leading central paradigm of all the European history, or also Mid Eastern, also sort of Western Asia, and that's why it has been involved in a lot of wars. And I think so. I have studied the Crusade.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I don't even have to like list all the historic wars that have been related to religion, but so I think the part where it gets controversial is that whether it's a fault of Christianity or not that those wars have broken. And I think my opinion is that if there wasn't really any religion, I don't think those wars would have happened. And yeah, I think that's the case. I think it's the same for all the other religions also.
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, so I would agree with you. I mean, it's how do I say, wars happen with religion and without religion. In fact, if you look at the Encyclopedia of Wars, and there's a website, you can see wars, and that the biggest wars actually were not fought for religious purposes. When I say biggest, is by the amount of people who died, were not religious wars. World War I, World War II were not religious wars.
Okay.
Right? Many other wars that were fought in, like the Chinese, like independence movement, and Korean War was not a religious war. There were idealistic wars, right? There were communism versus non-communism, or Nazism versus non-Nazi. I mean, people often think, oh, most of the wars are fought for religion. Actually, that's not true. But but it's also true to say many wars have been fought for religious reasons. Yes. Absolutely, that's the case. But my point to you earlier was not to say that Christianity is good or better because it has no wars. I said, relatively speaking, comparatively to every other religion, Christianity leaves countries and nations in a much better state in a long run. This is no longer just me speaking. This is verifiable facts. You can look at the history of countries and nations that have subscribed to Christian ideals and have woven those ideals in their laws and in their institutions, and you would see per capita, by GDP, by happiness index, you name it, you name the measure, and you will see the Christian nations are outdoing any other religion by far. By happiness, all the Nordic countries, which are the happiest countries in the world, like your Sweden and Norway and Iceland, they're very much based on Christian principles. Even though they deny it now they're very much of a secular, but they were built on Christian principles, and they still have institutions that operate based on Christian principles. And you name me any other country, and that holds true, still the same way.
I think.
And I would invite you to look it up. If you don't.
I do agree that Christian countries are more wealthy and things, and I think we have to distinguish causality and correlation.
Absolutely, we do. Yes.
Yes, and I think so. Yes, I do agree that Christian countries are most wealthy countries of the world. And is it because countries who have subscribed to Christianity became wealthier, or countries that have not subscribed to Christianity got invaded so much to other
but I didn't say just wealthier. I didn't just say wealthy. I'm talking about
happiness.
Well, happiness is part of it. Wealth, and it's also sense of health, like the well-being,
Yes.
right? Which includes a number of other things, right? It includes education, the level of education, level of health service providers, the ability to find job and meaning and purpose. I'm not talking about just wealth. I'm talking about all those things, right, combined. Those are the factors that you can look at, and you will see that the Christian nations outdo other nations on those terms.
Yes, but I think there are so many factors that affect those numbers, and I don't think such correlation alone can speak that.
Yeah. So I would invite you. So if you have a time, look up an author by the name of Tom Holland. Tom Holland. He's a non-Christian scholar, but he asked that very question, and the name of the book is called Dominion.
Okay.
And he examined the influence that the Christianity had on the national development of different countries, and came to the conclusion, again as a non-Christian, that Christianity by far had an extremely positive influence on the development of things like sciences, universities, hospitals, well-being, healthcare. Pretty much in every area, it was the Christian principles that were found doctrinally in the Bible, that were spoken, they had foundations, the ideas had foundations in the Bible that the people took and institutionalized and woven them and baked them into national and country level operations and institutions, right? So again, not my words. I'm not a scholar who did that. I've read this book, and he did a scholarly research that led him to that conclusion. Yeah.
Okay, so the conclusion is that Christian countries have more like better quality of life. That's what you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, let's say that's a fact. What does that mean to you? Like how does that? What does it mean to you?
To me, it doesn't mean anything other than I think I don't know how we got to this topic, right? But I think the idea was what difference does a religion make, right? And I think some people say, well, whether it's one religion or another, what difference does it make? My only argument is it does make a difference. It depends on what makes a difference to you, right? If you're after we talked about the two pillars, right? The truth and the outcome, right? Truth, you need to still investigate, right? You need to be convinced it's true, right?
Okay.
Personally, right? You're not convinced that you're not there yet. You need to have an argument. You need to have a proof, right? But I'm telling you, the outcome. That was the point how we got there, right? I'm talking about the outcome is shown through research to be there, right? People following Christian principles at national level leads to prosperity of human development, right? Is there historically, right? So now what you need to do is just pursue your proof, pursue your theory.
Well, so yeah. So do you think if it happens to have a better outcome, then do you think it justifies their means? Like,
No, I'm saying that they're independent things, right? So if it's an outcome could be just by luck or just by set of circumstances.
Well,
so you say
you can-
causality, right? And it's not necessarily correlation and causality are not
can
the same.
exclude that case because you said about like there are many like statistical searches at the
Yeah.
book you mentioned. So let's say it is undeniably true that like converting to Christianity will have a better outcome. Then does it mean Christianity have some moral
Superiority.
superiority over other religion? Does that imply that?
I think it does at the national level. I don't think it applies. It's not the truth necessarily at the personal level. So don't get me wrong, right? My argument here was at national level. So countries and nations that follow Christianity as their main religion do benefit long term from the moral principles because the Ten Commandments is within your law in this country, it's within my law in England, it's within American law in America. But it's not necessarily in China, it's not necessarily Vietnam, it's not necessarily Japan, right? They may have adopted it over time now, but it wasn't there originally, right? Those ideals were there, and those ideals benefit nations, right? Personally, it's a different story, right? I'm not going to sit here and claim that if someone converts, their life will be better. That I'm not saying that at all. Actually, I'm saying quite the opposite might be true. You might lose your friends. You might be excluded by your family. You might be seen as a lunatic. You might be seen as a weirdo. You might be seen as I don't know, someone who lost their mind. Not saying a person. I'm talking about nationally, right? That's different. But I do think it has superior moral principles. The reason for that is superior moral principles. I do believe that. Yeah.
Okay.
Which in itself does not speak of its truth, but it definitely, correlation is a very, if nothing else, is a strong indicator of further investigation, right? But this is where I'm talking about then the second part, right? It needs to be, okay, what is the truth? Like, how do we know whatever was written and God-given and not just some figment of someone's imagination, or as, I don't know if you read the book by Yuval Harari, Sapiens, right? He claims that religions are just a product of kind of people coming together. It's like a folk idea of kind of people that need something to glue them together. It's something that is a glue that binds people together, something that they can rally around together, some sort of a tribal kind of thing. That's his idea. I don't agree with that at all. But it's worth investigating. What is the truth? Like, is this idea of Christianity, did it come from man? Was it an idea from man, or was it an idea from God? I think there's quite a lot of investigation that can be done there independently.
Yeah, so let's say we have the same logic about democracy. I think like most of the democratic countries are more having a better outcome than other countries with different governments.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, but does that mean like, do people like concern about democracy's origin or how it came from man or from God? Like, because we don't do that, because democracy is not a religion. And
it's an idea, yeah. No one is claiming that, right?
Yes, it's an idea, right?
Yeah, but no one is claiming that democracy came from man. But a religion is being there's a claim.
Yes, but I can, right? I can claim that democracy came from some God, right?
You can claim, but what would be you have to provide some proof, some evidence for it. But
yes, proof or evidence. So
yeah.
What does Christianity have for that? Like,
yeah, so it makes a lot of claims with proof and evidence, right? It says that ideas came from the spoken words of God through the prophets, and then about Jesus, right? Jesus was a human being who was seen by eyewitnesses,
yes.
And it was recorded, right? His words were recorded, his actions were recorded. Even non-Christian historians have recorded the early church beginnings. They've recorded the early church beliefs. Those beliefs were unique. They were never before seen. They were not duplicated from anywhere. You have archaeological evidence of the early church, and the events that are mentioned in the Bible are all historically verifiable. They are not made up. They're actually in real historical places. The people that lived, like the rulers that are named by name in the Bible, they're all real rulers. They're not like made up figures.
Okay.
So if you look at and examine the Bible from a kind of critical perspective, historical perspective, it reads like a historical text, right? So just like any other historical text, like you look at anything that was written 2,000 years ago, it reads very much like a document that is historically verifiable.
Yes. So if I remember, I don't know the exact word in English. So there are two books in the Bible, right?
Old Testament and New Testament.
Yeah, Old Testament. That's the one I understand. So I have read some. I've tried to read the Old Testament and the New Testament, both of them, and especially I think the Old Testament have some. Is it acceptable to say that Old Testament is written by a man, or is it?
I said both books were written by man.
Okay.
Like in terms of who held the pen to the paper.
Yes.
Was man,
okay.
right?
And I think there are many events in the Old Testament that can be very controversial, like
miracles.
Yeah, like miracles and the flooding and
Yeah, Noah's flood. Yes,
and
exactly.
the ark.
Yes.
And I have read some very humorous article about Noah's Ark that if it were to contain all the animals as the Bible mentions, each animals would have a like cubic centimeters to their spacings,
Okay.
and to me I think that's very, because the Old Testament has the exact size of the ark, Noah's Ark, how it's long is it,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
so it's very easy to calculate, and so you have to come up with other ideas that how God enabled those kind of things, and to me I don't think truth should be that really raggy, like you have to fix every time you find some kind of errors. So it's like you're already going with an answer, going with the right answer. So you presume that there is a right answer, and the answer you have is the right answer, and you constantly find a way to make that true. I don't think that's a healthy way of pursuing truth.
I don't think anyone is trying necessarily to do that, right? Because first of all, I agree with you that but I think you're applying maybe your Western mindset now to the Bible, right? Because that very fact that you said you think the truth shouldn't be so raggy, that is something that's coming from a 2024 modern person. You want everything to be textbook, right? You would prefer things to be spelled out clearly as a textbook. This many and this many and this size and this is how they're distributed, categorized, and everything like that. No one wrote anything like that when those books were written.
Well, I don't think
Right.
my perspective is like because I'm a modern person, because I think the perspective I'm currently having doesn't really originate from modern some kind of ideology or something. It's an integrity of like human history,
Yeah.
how they evolved, and it kind of passed through generation through education. So I think this is the best way of understanding the truth we currently have.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think there's any problem with applying it to like historic events. That's so
Yeah, but the historians do that exactly. They look at similar works of that age, and they compare the styles and they compare the writings, and they say, look, is this something that is similar, and can we understand it? They try to put themselves in the readers from that age, how they would understand this. And some are stories. They're stories meant to tell a point, and some things are history meant to exactly describe what has happened. And every book of the Bible is different. You have Psalms, which is poetry. You have visions, that is prophecy. You have stories. You have retellings. I mean, same thing with the New Testament. Like the book of Revelation, which is the last book of the New Testament, is a vision. And you don't read the same thing. You don't read the books of vision the same way that you read the books of history and the four Gospels that we have with Jesus, right? There's a different genre. Right? And so yes, it requires us to be a little bit more. We need to not necessarily put our answers into the Bible, no, but we have to understand what is it that we're reading, what is the context that we're reading, what is the genre that we're reading, and who was it written to. It wasn't written to us; it was written to the people at the time, and so that's what scholars do. But I would say, for all of the challenges that Bible has, which I would say are many, I'm not defending them by any stretch of imaginations, it is also true that no one has been able to necessarily prove outright that Bible is a work of fiction either, right? So it's something that scholars continue to explore to this day and study. Yeah.
okay.
You
So,
gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta go.
No worries.